and realizing that everything comes to an end and we all need to be ready for it.
Neil Sedaka, a man whose music had touched millions of people around the world.
Been able to get it to you before you passed away, but well, just didn't have the right connections, but anyway.
For decades, Neil Sedaka's voice had been part of the soundtrack of people's lives. His songs played on radios, records, and stages across the globe. But during this farewell, the focus was not only on the famous musician. It was on the father, the husband, and the grandfather that his family loved deeply. One of the most emotional moments came when his son, Marc Sedaka, stepped forward to speak about his father. Marc did not talk first about fame or awards. Instead, he spoke about the man behind the music. His words painted a picture of a father who believed in creativity, hard work, and the importance of family. He began by remembering where his father's story truly started. Long before the world knew the name Neil Sedaka, he was simply a young boy growing up in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. Life was modest, and the family lived in a small apartment shared by many relatives. In fact, 11 people lived together under the same roof. The apartment was crowded, and money was limited. Yet even in that environment, something extraordinary was beginning to grow. Marc explained that his father's musical journey began because someone noticed his talent very early. A second-grade teacher saw that young Neil had a special ability for music. The teacher told his mother that the boy had a gift and that the gift needed to be nurtured. But there was one major problem. The family could not afford a piano. For many families, that might have been the end of the dream. But Neil's mother, Eleanor Sedaka, believed deeply in her son's talent. Instead of giving up, she made a sacrifice. She took a job at a department store and began saving every dollar she could. Slowly, over time, she managed to gather enough money to buy a second-hand upright piano. That piano was placed in their small apartment. It was not expensive or beautiful, but it changed everything. From that instrument came the melodies that would one day reach millions of listeners around the world. Marc told the audience that the piano represented more than music. It represented belief. It represented a mother who refused to let her child's talent go unnoticed. From that moment forward, music became the center of Neil Sedaka's life. He spent hours practicing, writing melodies, and exploring new ideas. What began as a simple hobby soon turned into something much greater. As he grew older, his passion for music continued to grow stronger. Eventually, that passion led him into the world of songwriting and performance. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, Neil Sedaka became one of the most successful pop artists of his generation. His songs were played everywhere. Fans loved his voice, his melodies, and the emotions he placed inside every lyric. Songs like "Oh, Carol," "Calendar Girl," and "Breaking Up Is Hard to Do" became major hits. They helped define the sound of an era and brought him international fame. But Marc also reminded everyone that success does not always last forever. In the mid-1960s, the music industry began to change. The arrival of bands like the Beatles transformed the pop music landscape. Many artists who had been successful earlier suddenly struggled to remain popular. Neil Sedaka experienced that challenge as well. For a time, the hits slowed down and his career entered a difficult period. But Marc explained that his father never stopped believing in his music. Instead of giving up, he continued writing, composing, and searching for new opportunities. That determination eventually led to one of the most remarkable comebacks in pop music history. In the early 1970s, Neil Sedaka moved to England in search of a fresh start. There he found support from fellow musicians who admired his songwriting talent. One of the most important supporters was Elton John, who helped introduce Sedaka's music to a new audience. With that encouragement, Neil Sedaka returned to the spotlight once again. Soon he was performing for large audiences who welcomed him back with excitement and admiration. Marc shared how much his father loved performing. Neil once described the experience of standing on stage as a powerful feeling. He said it was like an adrenaline rush, a natural high that came from sharing music with an audience. Even after decades of performing, that feeling never faded. But while fans saw the performer, Marc and his family saw something more personal. At home, Neil Sedaka was not a star. He was a father. Marc remembered how his father always tried to make time for family, even when his schedule was busy with concerts and travel. He was proud of his children and loved spending time with them. Neil shared a marriage that lasted 64 years with his beloved wife Lieba. Their relationship was built on loyalty, support, and a deep understanding that had grown stronger over time. Lieba stood beside him through every stage of his career, the early success, the difficult years, and the exciting comeback. Their daughter Dara Sedaka also shared a special musical connection with her father. In 1980, they recorded a duet called Should Have Never Let You Go. The song became a hit and remains a special moment in their family history. Although Dara chose not to pursue a full music career afterward, the experience created a lasting bond between father and daughter. Marc chose his own creative path as well. Instead of music, he became a writer for film and television, but the storytelling spirit clearly ran in the Sedaka family. Neil Sedaka had spent his life turning emotions into melodies, while Marc turned ideas into stories on screen. As Marc continued speaking during the tribute, it became clear that the moment was not only about remembering a famous musician. It was about celebrating a life that had been lived with passion, dedication, and love. Neil Sedaka's career lasted more than 6 decades. He began writing songs when he was just a teenager and continued creating music well into his 80s. Few artists managed to remain connected with audiences for such a long time. His melodies became timeless. But as Marc reminded everyone, the greatest part of his father's legacy was not only the music. It was the way he treated people. He was kind, encouraging, and deeply devoted to the people closest to him. The world received the music. His family received the man behind it. As the tribute came to an end, the room was filled with quiet emotion. Fans around the world will always remember Neil Sedaka for his songs. But through the heartfelt words of his son Marc, everyone present was reminded of something even more meaningful. Behind every legendary artist is a human story. And in the case of Neil Sedaka, that story was one of family, love, and a lifetime devoted to sharing music with the world.